Welcome to Captive and Obedient, the podcast powered by 2 Corinthians 10 and 5. This is the podcast for the mission-minded messenger who has a message, mission, or vision from God. You want to show up in a bigger way in your life, ministry, and business. You want to grow your impact and income. And you value the work of renewing the mind so you can show up in your calling and prosper. Welcome home. I am your host, Kim Springer, certified life and business mindset coach. Grab your Bible and your brain and let's go. Hello, beloved. Welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 9, the Gideon Effect, believing new things about yourself. In this episode, you will learn the skill of believing new things, which will instantly set you apart from other people. The skill of believing new things is a powerful skill that allows you to create any result you want in your life. Remember, all things are possible to the one who believes. If you've got some things you want to do, then this is the episode for you. You will be equipped. Last week, I introduced you to the Gideon Effect, and we're going to spend the next few episodes unpacking his story and just how this applies to you. If you missed that episode last week, episode 8, you must listen to it. It is truly a life-altering episode. You've got to listen to that. Anything about Gideon and the revelation will change your life. And so just let's do a little bit of review. And so the Gideon Effect is the result of God himself when he works with a person's brain to take them from a place of defeat to victory without changing their circumstances. We don't realize how much of our lives are caught up in trying to change our circumstances. If we don't like something about our life, we'll just change it or go get something new or go do something new. We're constantly changing circumstances instead of focusing on what we can control. What can you control? You can control your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. I call it control the controllables. Instead of changing the circumstances, control the controllables. And here is the thing. When you focus on controlling the controllables, you create new results that become new circumstances. See how that works? That's how you get new circumstances. And so the Gideon Effect is a term that I created, and it's really how God is going to work with your brain, your mind, your thoughts to get you from defeat to victory without even changing your circumstances. And so this is powerful. This is why we're dedicating as many episodes as we need to truly unpack this revelation of the Gideon Effect. And the last episode, we also learned that God is the first and best mind-brain surgeon. We also looked at the beginning of Gideon's story. He's hiding from the Midianites who are heavily oppressing him and his people, the Israelites. We learned this oppression was the result of not listening to God, and I shared how it came as a result of forgetting who they were. So it's not a surprise that our mind-brain surgeon, better known as God, would work with Gideon's identity first. And this is what we see happening. The very first thing the angel says to him is who he is. Let's look at Judges chapter 6, Verse 12, when the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Remember, the way Gideon sees himself has him hiding to survive. Yet God calls him a mighty warrior. And we can see Gideon automatically rejects this. And it's because of two reasons. The first reason is his circumstance. He's like, if that's true, then why is this happening? And we talked about that last week, so you've got to go listen to that. But the second reason he rejects God's word to him about his identity is because of how he sees himself. And now what we're going to do, we're going to look at how Gideon sees himself. Let's read verses 14 and 15. It says, "The Lord turned to him and said, 'Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?' Verse 15, "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." Nothing was lining up for Gideon. He couldn't see how God was with him and how he was a mighty warrior. He couldn't see how he would save Israel. And nothing was lining up for him in his mind, only because of how he saw himself. The way he saw himself was keeping him from fulfilling his destiny. Lean in. You cannot fulfill your assignment believing the wrong thing about yourself. Now, you may try, but it'll be frustrating. You're thinking so many unhelpful things about yourself as you try to fulfill your assignment. And these can be thoughts like, I don't follow through. I'm not interesting. I'm not great on video. I'm not a tech person. I'm a procrastinator. Something is wrong with me. I can't get it together. You're likely thinking something about yourself that you see as completely harmless, so you don't think to question it, and you've thought it about yourself for so long, maybe even your whole life, that it seems so innocent. And what happens is you have so much proof for this identity, for this thought. And a little side note here, you actually keep creating proof of it. How you see yourself is the cause of your frustration as to why you can't make progress in your assignment. When you stop trying to fulfill your assignment while believing the wrong thing about yourself, the frustration will end. I look at the children of Israel who weren't allowed to enter into the promised land. They are all the evidence I need of this. The way they saw themselves prohibited them from entering the promised land. They said, "And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight." They did not obtain their inheritance because of how they saw themselves, not because there were giants in the land. Don't miss this. The giants didn't keep them out. Their thoughts about themselves did. And you will not be able to fulfill your destiny with faulty beliefs about yourself. This is actually great news. The giants in your life aren't keeping you from what God has for you. Only your thoughts about yourself. God knows this. So like Gideon, he tells you who you are. And your job is to believe it. All right, back to Gideon. How was he seeing himself? He said, My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. Okay, so my clan, he's saying my family. And what he's saying here, when you look at other translations, he's saying my family is the poorest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. Here is the thing. Gideon had to hear this in order to believe this. He heard about how his family was the weakest, how his family was the poorest in the tribe of Manasseh, and how he was the least significant in his family. And they had evidence that their family was the poorest. They could see what the other families had, and they could see what they had. And they could come to the conclusion, we are the poorest. Gideon had evidence that he was the least in his family. And you believe what you believe about yourself because you see evidence of it daily. And that evidence confirms your belief. And you stay in the behaviors that perpetuate that identity. And this right here is what you need to interrupt. You need to interrupt this belief of how you see yourself, regardless of the mountain of evidence you have to prove it. The call of Gideon as a mighty warrior was an interruption to his belief about how he saw himself. This episode is about believing new things about yourself. God knew that Gideon would need to believe something different about himself in order to be used by him to deliver the Israelites. Likewise, if you're to do anything for God, you will have to believe something new about yourself. Believing new things is actually a skill you can develop. And when you do, you become unstoppable because the only thing standing in between you and a new result is a belief. Let's talk about believing, and then we'll talk about believing new things. Believing is deciding and accepting that something is true. It doesn't make it true. It just makes you believe it is true. And a belief is just a thought you've thought over and over again, accepting it as true. And a thought is just a sentence in your brain. You think the sentence, then you create the result of that sentence. Everything starts with a thought. Let's say you have a thought about yourself, like you're not the smartest person in the room. If you think it over and over, accepting it as true, it becomes a belief. You show up from that belief and create evidence of that belief in the world. That evidence confirms that belief, and you stay in a loop of operating from that belief and creating more results, further strengthening that belief. Now, when you want to believe something new, you have to do the same thing. You have to think a sentence over and over again while accepting it as true. When you operate from that sentence, you create evidence of that sentence. That action you took creates evidence of your new identity, which causes you to believe in that identity, which is just a thought. Identity is nothing more than a thought you take about yourself. And as we already established, a thought is just a sentence. So the action you took creates evidence of that new identity, of that new thought, of that new sentence. Action is evidence of your new identity. As you show up taking action from that identity, you create evidence that you are that person. This is the power of believing new things. Now, the work of believing new things also includes unbelieving, which is unaccepting what you have been believing that is no longer serving you. Once you do that, you are able to believe something different on purpose. And this is important for you to see that there has to be the unaccepting of what you previously accepted as true. And then you're free to believe something different on purpose. Recently, I was sharing with a client that I had become aware of a belief about myself that was hindering me. And I would notice this belief when God would put me in what I call the advanced room. And so God would open up a door for me to be in a room where I'm amongst those that are at a higher level than me, the advanced room. And this room is for my growth. And so I was thinking in that room, they're on a higher level than me. They are smarter than me. But actually, I was believing I'm not the smartest one in the room. I was actually thinking thoughts about myself that caused me to shrink. Here's my actions. Now I'm creating evidence of this thought I was believing. Caused me to shrink, to be quiet, to not be heard, to not share my opinions, my thoughts. And then eventually the result that thought created, how I saw myself, it created me turning around and walking right out the room that God placed me in. Seeing that truly opened my eyes to how God can place you where he wants you. You can walk into the promised land, but if you don't have the thoughts about yourself to keep you there, you can actually walk yourself right out of that room. And this is what we do most of the time. God gives us the promise. We're in that blessing, but we don't have the thoughts about ourselves to maintain it, to sustain it. And we actually just walk right out of it. And so this is why it's so important to identify the things you're believing about yourself and that you know exactly how to change them. And I'm going to share with you now the 4 steps to believing something new, something you don't believe yet. So let's take the example of me being in the advanced room. What would be something that I would need to believe that I don't believe yet? I needed to believe something new. I couldn't take my old beliefs into the new place. And this is what we try to do. We try to pour new wine into old wineskins. We try to bring the old into the new. No, I needed a new thought in that new room. I needed a thought that helped me believe that I belong instead of how I don't belong. And so we're going to share with you these 4 steps to believing something new and something that you don't yet believe. Okay, let's get into it. Believing something new is a decision. That's the first thing you have to know. It's a decision. It's something that you do on purpose, and it has to be programmed. You can't just make the decision, I'm going to believe that, and then just skedaddle down the road. You're going to have to work with your brain to program this belief. But first, yes, it is a decision. All right. And so these 4 steps I'm going to share with you, they are proven effective with my clients. It has helped many of them step into new identities that seemed like far off, and they stepped into it with these 4 steps. Okay, you're ready for them? I'm going to give them to you. You're going to be unstoppable when you learn how to believe something that you don't yet believe. Number 1, decide what you want to believe by visualizing it. Number 2, create the sentence. Number 3, accept it as true. And number 4, practice and repeat. There you are, the 4 simple steps of believing something new. It's really as simple as creating a new thought and believing it. If you commit to believing it, feeling it, and acting on it, you will create the result it promises. Okay, let's briefly look at each of these steps. Number 1, decide what you want to believe by visualizing it. Visualization is the missing piece for many people when they're trying to believe something new. And I love to look at how when God promised Abram, he changed his name from Abram to Abraham and told him he would be the father of many nations. And I love seeing how God works with our mind, works with our brain. He could have just told him that. That's a new sentence for him to believe. You will be a father. You don't even have any kids, but you're going to be a father. And greater than that, you're going to be a father of many nations. God could have just gave him the new sentence to believe, but he didn't leave it at that. He also gave him images. And so what did he tell him? He says, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Now, I just want you to imagine this. Every day, those 2 reminders are there in front of Abraham. So day and night, his meditation is on the new sentence. When he sees the sand, he remembers, I am a father of many nations. When he sees the stars, he remembers, I am a father of many nations. And so many times we're missing this visualization part. And so you want to begin to get the images of what it looks like when you are fully believing this new thing. Okay, that's the first thing. The second step, create the sentence. This is so simple. Don't complicate this. Remember, a thought is just a sentence in your head. And so you want to create the sentence. What is that new sentence? So for Gideon, it was, I am a mighty warrior. That's what he needed to believe. Me showing up in the advanced room, I need to believe I belong. That's it. Do not complicate this. And so you're creating a sentence. So if you know that God has called you to a certain thing and he says, this is how I made you. I think about Moses in Exodus 6:30 and Exodus 7:1, where Moses saw himself a certain way and God said, this is how I made you though. And so Moses is like, I can't speak very well. Look, God. God is like, you look. I have made you as God to Pharaoh. And so the sentence that Moses would need to believe is that God has made me like God to Pharaoh. And so create the sentence. And if we are creating something new to believe about ourselves, that sentence is going to be, I am. It is that simple. Number 3, accept it as true. And this truly, again, you don't want to complicate this. This truly, again, is about making the decision. When God said to me in 2021, you are a multiplier, I had to accept that as true in order to create that new belief that I am a multiplier. So you make the decision to say, this is true. And the last step is practice and repeat. And practice. This is the important step because remember, action is the evidence of the new identity. When you see yourself showing up and doing the things that identity does, that is the evidence. Many times we're looking for the result, but your identity is the evidence. Action is evidence of your new identity. And so with practice, it's simply just a new way of being. You step into this new way of being by living as if you already believed this new thought. This is the key, and this is so powerful. It's so life-changing. When I help my clients build this skill and they see that, wait a minute, it's this simple. I can just believe what God has said about me, and then I just show up living as if that is true, and they change their lives. They change their businesses, and it's just this simple. So I don't want you to miss this. You just step into this new way of being by living as if you already believed this new thought. So even though you're practicing to believe it and to take action from it, the key is living as if you already did believe it. You step into the role of that person. You think the thoughts this person would be thinking, you feel the feelings, and then you start acting from those feelings. And it's truly that simple. Beloved, if you want to start making progress on your assignment and do what God has called you to do, you need to learn the skill of believing new things. We are just replaying beliefs that have been programmed and practiced. You have beliefs that you've been believing your whole life, and every time you show up and take action from it, you're practicing that belief, creating more evidence for that belief, confirming it, and just staying in the loop of creating from it. And so in order to step into the new with God, you need to believe something different on purpose. It's that simple, beloved. Start with what He has said about you. Use the steps outlined in this episode and watch how you become that person. And that's what we have for you today. It is life-changing. I wish I could truly share with you how you need to do this. You just need to do it. You need to be like, you know what? I'm going to devote and commit to believing new things about myself. And you're going to see your life change like you've never seen it changed before. Okay, remember, we got a mission here, and that is 1 million minds renewed. Why don't you share this episode with someone? Tell them hey, I know how you can start believing new things about yourself. It's 4 simple steps. This podcast episode is going to break it down for you. And let's help the people. And if you are here because someone shared this episode with you, welcome home. All right, we will see you in the next episode. Hey, are you ready to use your mind to prosper in the way God has designed it to? Then I want to give you your first tool that will make this easy for you. This is the tool I use to prime my brain to take thoughts captive. It's a client favorite and the one tool I use the most when coaching my clients. It's my gift to you so you can take control of your thoughts, advance in your calling, and see and experience God's will and best in your life and others. Head over to visioncoachkim.com/tool to watch this on-demand training or use the link in the show notes. I'll see you there. And remember, you are one captive thought away from your breakthrough.